You and I share a connection in Mark McDaniel.
Yep.
All right. Mark McDaniel was my head football coach. And I'm listening to you. I mean, you are, I would describe it as you're damn near maniacal when it comes to this intentional, not just self-optimization, but also system optimization.
Yeah, thanks.
But going back to Van Alstyne, like when you look back at the kid back in Van Alstyne, you talked about your grandfather, a World War II vet. What does that mental gap, like that mindset gap, look like between Van Alstyne and now where you are in College Station?
The journey of 1,000 miles, right? It begins with a step. Speaking of Coach McDaniel, I don't want to cry, but I got a letter from him on Monday, and Coach is 74, and Coach never coached me. I never played football. I love football more than any other sport, including basketball, and I love football coaches more than basketball coaches. To hearken back to Van Alstyne, late 80s, early 90s when I was in high school, the impact that Coach McDaniel specifically and all of those other coaches had on me. From rural America, from a divorced household, from a town that didn't have a stoplight, I had no idea how big the world was, literally and figuratively. And I've said this a few times, not often. But you know, one of the lessons that still has impacted my heart now is as I was trying to figure out my way, manager at a junior college for 2 years, manager at an NAIA school for 2 years, my first job in college coaching at 21 for $100 a week. I had no idea that God was orchestrating my steps, but I also didn't know that he was orchestrating my stops. And I think sometimes we're too Pollyanna in, look at this, went here, did that, look at that, wow, what a story. Yeah, but what's not mentioned are the stops. What's not mentioned is the hurt or the scars. And the one point that I wanted to make specific to Van Alstyne and Coach, you never know what your path is. And because human nature, we're always selfish, we're constantly just thinking about ourselves. You never know that your path and that person, that relationship's path, you think about where you're going to go. Oh, you're going to become the head coach here, and you're going to go here, and then you're going to do this, and then you're going to do that. But you never think of that based on the other person. Where is their path? And will it ever intersect again? And I write Coach every other month. And I haven't seen Coach McDaniel since 1990.
Wow.
Nobody, Daron, ever told me that I could do this. And in my early 30s, mid 30s, I think at times egotistically I was upset by that, almost in a hateful way.
When you say do this, like be a head basketball coach.
Sure, like, now you can do it. And now, I just turned 50 this month. Now I look back and I'm so appreciative that they didn't tell me I couldn't do it. Isn't that interesting, right? I think so, you know, should you prepare the child for the road, or should you prepare the road for the child? And the road that I walked at Van Alstyne is literally diametrically opposed to the road that my children walk. And how can I take the wisdom from the road that I walked, which is different than the one they're walking, and make sure that the things that I think are most important, that even though the scenery and the environment on the road they're on doesn't change the habits and values and morals and work ethic, et cetera, that's required.
Coach, this is something that I struggle with because what you just described, growing up in Mount Pleasant, Texas, population 12,291, there's a certain life there, both externally in the town and then in my home.
Sure.
And I'm exposing my kids now, because of the foundation that I had, to a different life.
Yes.
In many ways that I don't really know.
Yes.
Like they know this new road almost better than I do. They spent their whole lives in it. I've just come into it.
That's right. They're living it at the same time you are.
Right. How do you got these frequencies?
Yeah.
And it hits me every time I take them back to Mount Pleasant and get them around my mom and my dad. And I'm like,
they think they're in Mars.
Yeah. And you know, coming from Austin, Texas, it never fails when we head back. They're like, wow, that was so good. Man, even though we didn't get a deer, I'm just glad we went out and sat in the stand for 3 hours.
World slowed down for them.
Right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents deal with this. You know, you're on this upward trajectory from a financial and environmental standpoint, but you're trying to keep it's that road versus the preparation. Like, how do you, hell, I don't know if it's balance or juggle. Like, how do you work through that?
I don't know. I used to think that balance was the right word. And I'm not even saying that I'm right now. I think balance, when I hear it, it makes me think that things are weighted equally. And I'm trying to make sure that it's not a teeter-totter. And I don't know, as a father, as a leader of my household and outside of my household, I don't know that balance is the word that I want to use. In the previous question, you mentioned I'm maniacal in many of my systems. Without arrogance, I agree 1,000%. Like, maniacal. I can't give up what I'm convicted that is important in this system, because I believe that it's the system that prepares you for whatever comes that way. And so when we talk about balance, Mount Pleasant versus Austin, Van Alstyne versus College Station, and all the places you've been since, and all the places that I've been since. The athletic director at Mount Pleasant High School is from the same hometown as my grandfather that was a large part of growing me up. The high school coach from Mount Pleasant just wrote me a letter. It's not Mount Pleasant. It's not Austin. It's not Van Alstyne. It's not College Station, because to me, it's not a balance. What it is it's your life, and it's your lifestyle. And if you take this family and plop them down in Blacksburg, Virginia, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in Austin, Texas, you know, it was so hard. We moved here when my oldest daughter, our first child, was a senior in high school. Man, it hurts my heart. It hurts my heart to even talk about it now. And at the end of that school year, the pandemic began. So in her senior year, she was brand new. She didn't have a prom. She didn't have a high school graduation. And you know, we would have meetings, BMs, business meetings as a family. And I would tell them, you can't make long-term decisions based on short-term circumstances. And so the reason why I don't use the word balance anymore is I think it has to be, you're on my team. We are on a team together. This player, that assistant, this daughter, this son, this wife, the assistant coach's wife. We have to make decisions. We're all on the same team together. And it is hard when you feel as though you have to make sure that you're investing appropriately in all of those people, including your family, obviously. We played in the NCAA tournament in year 4 at Virginia Tech. So that would have been 5.5 years ago. My mom came to the game. She'd never been to a game.
Had never, before that?
Never been to an NCAA tournament game. Didn't even know what it was. Get a car service to drive her from Longview to Dallas. Get somebody to fly with her from Dallas to the NCAA tournament. We lose at the buzzer. I'm going home with the team. Well, she's on a commercial flight. My wife, my kids, hey, y'all need to stay in the hotel 2 more days until grandma can fly home. So my kids come home. I've been at home 2 days by myself in Blacksburg. We just got beat. Season's over. My family is babysitting my mom in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a long way from Longview. And my kids come home, and every day for the next 15 days, next 20 days, next 30 days, different times, every kid had a question. Hey, Dad, where'd you grow up? Dad, where'd you go to school? Dad, what? Where's your dad? Is your mom not married to your dad? Where was your dad there? Is your mom married? Who is she married to? Does your mom have any brothers or sisters? Where is Van Alstyne? Where'd you go to church? Did you go to college? Where'd you go to college? This went on for about a month. I say, hey, guys, I'll answer any question you have, but it's similar to your question. This road over here in Mount Pleasant that you grew up on, and this road that your children are growing up on in Austin, they're unfamiliar with Mount Pleasant. They only know Austin. They assume that you only know Austin because since they've been born, probably you've been in Austin. They didn't know you were on another road. So I tell them, hey, when you guys get out of school, we're going to fly and we're going to rent the biggest van, and I'm going to answer every question you have. And I planned out everything. Family reunion, to see my junior college coach, to go to my high school, to take pictures, to go to the church, to do everything. To go see my mom, to go see my dad, to go see her side of the family, his side of the family. 7 days, a tour of the roads that I grew up on. And what I realized was it expanded their paradigm of their world. And I think that's why we, whoever we are in your group, your family, that is your responsibility. You're trying to expand their world, figuratively and literally. And the only way you can expand their world are through experiences, are through relationships. You're trying to teach them your road. Now they will better understand the lens in which you see the road in Austin. But you have to, that's your job. That's your responsibility, is to expand their world. And as their world is expanding, it's because they stepped outside of their world. And your job as their dad is, when they're outside of their world, is to teach them how to translate that back into their world. And as it's coming from outside their world, to translate it into their world is expanding. And that's how I think you do it.
You know, I had a moment in 2013 when day after final regular season game, Jimmy Haslam walks in, fires all the coaches. 8 o'clock start time, 8:02, he's done. I go home, and I'm scrambling eggs, and my 3-year-old son walks over to me. He tugs on my shirt. He says, "You eat breakfast?" I did what any good father would do. I just ignored the kid. At the time, I'm thinking, I've been fired. Where's the next destination? Who do I need to call? He comes back. Same question. I turn to my wife, grew up in Leavenworth, Kansas, on a ranch, never one to pull punches. She said, well, when was the last time
He saw you.
you had breakfast with Dylan? And I had that smirk on my face, like, all right, I'm going through my mental Rolodex. I can't find a breakfast, snack, lunch. Given the demands on your time as a head coach, does the nature of your job put a ceiling on your husband, dad capacity? Like, is there a built-in ceiling?
Yeah.
And if so, like, how have you?
Yeah. The first thing, and you know this, your wife needs to be a CEO.
Mm.
Your wife needs to be your best friend. And your wife needs to feel as if she is the most important person on earth at all times. To get those three things is a rarity, but I think it's required. And then I think the next thing is, and it's like anything else that in this conversation we're having, I have 9 daily disciplines, and they change based on the season, not the basketball season. But we're in October. What are the 9 disciplines I need in October? That's going to be different in January when we're going to play 8 conference games. So you do live your life in seasons, but there has to be daily disciplines that you are not going to sacrifice, even if that means you're unemployed. And I think a part of this answer, Coach, is you have to be willing to lose your job that you're so convicted by those disciplines. We have 2 children in college now, 2 kids that live at home. And for 8 years in a row, one of the daily disciplines on my calendar, they're code words, they're acronyms, SMB, school, meal, bed. Did I do one of those 3 things 5 days out of the week? And if I didn't, then I can't check the box. And then it's a stat. At the end of the month, on my daily disciplines, what were my numbers? Is that good? Is that bad? Et cetera, et cetera. In September of last year, I turned 49. And I was like, I've got to figure out, now that I have 2 in college, like the dynamics have changed. There's only 2 at home. It's like the easiest thing ever when you've had 4 at home. And I felt like I seem to be doing a better job with half the team than the whole team. Well, that's not right. Well, it's just math, right? Yeah, I'm doing better. There's only 2 of them. Hey, man, you want to come to work? Hey, you want to come train with me? Hey, you got a volleyball game today? I'll come over there. There's only 2 of them. So I said, what is it that I can do that will help, that holds me accountable to, whether they're in Mount Pleasant or Austin or College Station, that I'm being accountable to my role as a dad. So I write my children every day that they go to school, and have since that point. I've never missed a day.
Every day.
Every day. It's right over there. Sissy gets a yellow one. Bubba gets a blue one. Mace gets a pink one. Baby gets a green one. I write them a note every day. And the note is 3 sentences from this conversation. And tomorrow, 3 sentences from this type of conversation. The 2 they're at home, I slide it under their door every morning because they haven't seen me eat breakfast very often in their life. The two that are in college, I address the envelope. In the return address envelope portion, I write the date. I apply the stamp, and it's going to be postmarked that day. And I've never missed a day. And my wife is telling me, as I'm approaching 50 last month, baby, you probably need to let that one go, don't you think? That requires a lot of time. If I'm going to be gone recruiting for 3 days, that means I have to get 3 days ahead. It's easy. Hey, I'm going to spend the night at my house tonight. I'm going to be here tomorrow. Okay, yeah, I'm going to write 4 notes. But if you start accumulating, I'm going to be gone these 5 days recruiting. I'm going to be gone these 3 days in a tournament in Myrtle Beach. I'm going to be with the team. Okay, now that requires I got to move some things around to be able to check that box. WMK, write my kids every day that they go to school. That requires me to know, are you on fall break? When do you get out for Christmas? When is Thanksgiving? If you go to school, I'm writing you, whether you go to that junior college or that university or this high school or this middle school, that engages me because I got to know. I haven't missed a day. And my wife will see me on Sundays when she knows I'm leaving on Monday morning to travel. She's like, sweetheart, you don't have to do it. You can miss a day. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I can. And I don't think my children would say anything to me. But when I'm not around my children, what an incredible inheritance I'm giving them every day. So I'm at baby's volleyball game 2 days ago. I've orchestrated my day to be able to get to baby's volleyball game, as you know. And Bubba sends me a text. And the text is a picture of because all of his notes are in blue, every card I've sent him for the last, 15 months. And he's got them per month. And the picture is all of them piled up. And I showed it to Corey and I said, that's why I can't stop. Because when I'm not here, he'll have that. He's going to have whatever else we give him. But he knows that every day that I'm trying to give you something because you're on my team, whether you're here, not here, old, young, good player, bad player, assistant coach, secretary. No, you're on my team. And that's not balance because you're on my team all the time. And so if I'm going to be gone 4 days, I'm going to have to find a way because I'm convicted that even if I lose my job, I don't want to be labeled by the color of my skin. I don't want to lead based on the color of their skin. I don't want to lead based on their gender. I don't want to lead based on their socioeconomic. I don't want to lead that you were labeled. You lived on the other side of the tracks in Mount Pleasant. I know where you're from. I know that road. No. Don't label Daron like that. I don't want that leader. You're just a coach. No, please. You don't have to ever call me coach. And so I don't want my job, my career to put a ceiling on who I can be as a husband, on who I can be as a father. No. I don't want that label. I want to be the best I can be, regardless of category. But in order to do that, I can't have balance in each category. No, I'm on that team all the time. And I have to be convicted that my priorities relative to that team, I can live out those priorities, which requires me to know what to say no to. Like this, I'll be transparent with you. I have never done an interview in this office since I've lived here. Ever. No one has ever sat in that chair.
This is the first one you've done this office.
I've never done one. I'm not going to do one. I'm doing one because of our interaction in 2010. That's it. Not not the local media, not the national media. No, we're not doing this. And I can tell you that when you were bringing your equipment through the office complex, they were wondering, who is this dude? And how are you getting in Buzz's office? Because I say no to all of this. Because, not being negative at all, I wanted to say yes to this. But my point is, when I give an hour to this, I have to know by saying yes to this, I'm in essence saying no to some other things. Mm-hmm. But my priorities, I can't say no to. So I'm not saying no to those priorities, but yet I'm adding an hour to my day. It's just an hour, Buzz. It's great exposure. No. I'm not doing this for exposure, right? And so those decisions impact your ability to not have a lid.
So first, thank you for the space and the time. I feel like there are two components here. One is having a rubric to decide what gets no and yes.
Yeah.
And the second piece, which I found is probably more difficult for people, is then having the courage to say the no.
Absolutely.
And you talked about your red zones.
Yep.
And even when you're in a position where it's probably, a lot of people would think it's easier for people to understand when they receive a no from you. But have you had a growth curve on that courage component of being able to say no?
I used to never say no because I was immature relative to my wisdom. I thought that was a part of the job. And so I realized that I was giving my energy and my time and my emotion to help other people do their job. Oof. And so it has for sure been a curve, absolutely. And your question was perfectly asked. It is figuring out what to say yes and no to. And that does take time to figure that out. But then it's as you begin to figure that out, having the courage to say no, because you have to know that as your leadership tenure expands, you're exposed to a different clientele of potential relationships. Mm. And so to have the courage to say no to some of them could impact your tenure. And you have to be willing to go, yeah, I'm okay with that because I don't want to lid as a husband. I don't want to lid as a father. And you know what I'm convicted most by is, and I don't mean this in a condescending way, I feel great, overwhelming responsibility to the mother or father that I'm committed to helping their child. I understand a part of it is athletically related. But as a parent of 4 who don't have any athletic ability, the commitment that I would need from their coach or their leader, hey, now, I've tried to help them. Now, are you going to help them? And so I feel overwhelming responsibility to those parents that I am saying no to the things that would take away my time, energy, and emotion to keep my commitment to those parents relative to that child. Mm. And what I think is so hard is this is every day. The no and the courage to say no, that is a learning curve. And you have to know that when you say no, the counter to that is really you're saying yes to something else. And the same is true vice versa. When I say yes to this, I'm also saying no to something else. And what I have learned and the way I would succinctly answer this, my yes has to be so much bigger and bolder than my no. And that's why I can easily say no, because I'm not going to give you my energy and emotion on why I'm saying no. Because it's like Nehemiah when he was isn't it Nehemiah when he was building the wall, or is that Jericho? It's Nehemiah 4:6. And these people keep coming to him going, hey man, you want to come down off that wall? No, I can't. I got to build this wall. And then the next king comes across and they're lying, they're tricking him, they're exaggerating the truth. Hey, we got this deal. You want to come down? I can't. This is my priority. I can't come off this wall. It's the same thing. That yes has to be so bigger, better, more bold, more overwhelming that the no, like, yeah, I'm not even participating in this. Well, what about this booster? What about this donor? What about this? You could do this interview. You could do this podcast. You could do this and you could do that. And then what about if you signed a sponsorship deal and you did it with this company and that company and you did that commercial and they gave you this amount of money and they did, no, I can't. My yes is bigger. And I think most leaders view it the opposite. I think you have to find your yes, and then the no becomes easy. But early on, for sure, I didn't want to say no. And so the no's became much bigger, bolder than the yeses. And I think it's the exact opposite.
Being a caretaker, okay? And you've talked about, you understand that in your position, some coaches will say, it's my program.
Yeah.
You know there's a coach before you, there's going to be a coach after you. At what point in your coaching trajectory did it click for you that you're sort of renting? I mean, right? Like
Sure.
this is a short-term rental and you're going to be somewhere else. And how do you not let the play seep into your ego, right? Because I was with 4 teams. I've got gear from
Absolutely
all play. I had to ship gear off to people because you're going from Detroit to, you can only take so much. Like, how do you not let the brand seep into your ego?
It's Ryan Holiday's book, right? Ego is the enemy. A few things on that. This is offensive to some that will hear it. I try not to wear the gear, no matter where I live. I try to give the gear away as I get it. And that has been a problem at times because astute observers will always say, why are you wearing a shirt and tie and a sport coat? Because I'm representing my family's brand. I want my grandma to be proud of me. They're paying you all this money and you're wearing a t-shirt and a polo? No. My grandmother would have major problems if I wasn't Easter Sunday best every day. I owe that to the people that raised me. They weren't raising me to be the head coach at Texas A&M. They were raising me to try to be my best. And it will seep into your bloodstream in an almost osmosis way, invisible. They give you a car, they give you a phone, they give you as many shoes and shorts and shirts. It will for sure seep into your bloodstream and your ego will take over. And I think the humility required has to be ongoing. You have to be constantly aware. Anytime you start saying my and using, I think it's certain pronouns, or, I've heard if you're saying I, if you're not saying we, if you're saying me and not us, if you're, that's so fragile. And I don't think that there's always a conclusive answer, but you have to make sure your spirit is full of humility. My NAIA coach, he would always say, hey, Buzz, I'm going to tell you how to handle this business. And I would say, I was a kid. I didn't even know this was business. He would always say, you need to walk around like you got a black eye. And I would always say, what does that mean? He goes, you ever had a black eye? Yes, sir. Well, what happened? Well, a kid hit me. Yeah. Well, did you want everybody to know he whipped you? No. So when you had the black eye, what'd you do? I go, I just kind of walk with my head down, hopes, turns, nobody can see it. He goes, that's the way you handle this business. When you start putting your neck out, head up, start saying me, mine, and that's when you're going to get clipped. Walk around like you got a black eye. And it was his way of saying, be humble, be grateful, make sure your spirit is in the right place. But it does, Daron. And I think that when you realize that you are only a steward, it's not your mantle. For me, it's his mantle. Do I always do right? No. But I am only a steward. And while I'm a steward, I want to best represent what I know is right by the institution, by the administration, by the former students, by the season ticket, by the parents, by the children on the team, by the staff. Like, it is a nonstop thing, but I have to write about it a lot. I have to pray about it a lot. And I try to restrict putting myself in a position where I know that as a human, my ego is going to want to take over. I felt like we went to 3 Sweet 16s in a row at Marquette. We went to an Elite Eight. We won the league when it was the former Big East. I was under 40. I was top 10 highest paid coach, never flew on a commercial plane, drove the nicest car that they could give me. My wife drove the nicest car, living a dream bigger than any that I ever had in Van Alstyne. Didn't even know how to conceive a dream like that. And you have to be really careful because you will begin to think that you deserve it. And you have to be cautious. You're only a steward. You just are a babysitter for that moment in time. And I don't know that I always handle it the right way. I'm very cautious about the words that I say publicly. And I have realized that I also need to be much more aware of the words that I say privately, because sometimes private words leak to public words. And then if you peel it back another layer, I have to realize that sometimes my self-talk comes out in a private talk. And then a private talk turns into a public talk. And so I'm constantly auditing my private talk. Hey, realize who you are. Realize how blessed you are. Realize how grateful you are. Should be. And realize that with those blessings come responsibilities. And those responsibilities, that's why you are the steward. So handle those responsibilities the right way, or you will no longer be the steward.
50-year-old Buzz Williams, not coach. In a parallel universe, if you're not coaching, what are you doing?
I have a lot of thoughts on that, so I'll try not to be too random. Bob Goff, the author, he says that when you're 50, that's the 5th version of yourself. And you should make decisions in your 5th version based on what you think you want your 6th version to be. In the 6th version of myself, am I still coaching? Probably not. Am I a grandfather of some? Probably. Am I living in College Station? Probably not. Are my parents still alive? Don't know. So while living your fifth version, you should be thinking about where you're going to be in your sixth version. And he says that the best way to live your fifth version right is in your first version, you had no fear. And you didn't even know the questions to ask. And in your sixth version, you're trying to use the wisdom acquired on the way to your fifth version. And he's saying that your fifth version is the best fifth version you can come up with is your sixth and first combined. And I'm a huge Luke Combs fan. Remarkable story to how he has become so well known in country music. He has a song called "Doing This," and the song is I've been asked, what would you do if you weren't doing this? And he's talking about, well, I would be on the Grand Ole Opry stage, or I'd be doing a show in some no-name town, and I'd still be singing the same songs. And I'm like, wow. And so if I wasn't coaching, I don't know what the profession would be, but I do think that a part of my calling is to help others. And so I don't think that I'm going to be a coach that's old, so to say. I don't have to coach anymore. And I've realized that as my career has unfolded, I actually coach less than ever before because I realized that my calling is to help those that I'm around in coaching. My staff, the players, the manager, the this, the that, the trainer, the student trainer, I want to help you. How can I help you? Because I look back to the Coach McDaniels of my life, the Coach Orrs of my life, the people that I work for that were willing to help me. And I realized the impact that they had on me, which was a portion of propelling me to who I became. And so I want their experience, however long that it is that they are with me, wherever it is that they are with me. I don't want it to be tied exclusively to the institution. I want it to be tied to the experience, and I want my impact to help their life more than their game. And so a byproduct of that is I coach less, and I will stop practice to teach them something about life. I will end practice abruptly. Never mind the out of bounds play. Y'all come here. I got something, and I need to talk to you about this. This will help your life. We'll practice the out of bounds play tomorrow. And so what would I do? I don't know, but I do want to help others. I did some studying this summer actually on your second career. Like, I think that's where so many people struggle. At 8:02, you didn't have a job, and you're like, what am I going to do? You didn't know it was going to turn into all of this. But I see so many, it doesn't have to be coaches. We could talk about thousands of coaches that were ill-prepared because of the timing or because their whole identity was that of being a coach. And it was like, you're no longer a coach for reasons within your control or outside your control. Now what are you going to do? I don't know. And a lot of that is ego. And so the process, how many former players can't let go of? You're not a player anymore. You're starting a second career, and you're not starting that career where you left your playing career. You're starting back as a GA, your quality control. Like, I hire all of these. We have 7 employees on my staff that at one point were students. They were a player, they were a manager, they were a graduate assistant, and they've progressed in their career. And like our most recent former player that I hired, I'm like, nobody cares that you played, right? I care, you care. And that's the relationship in how you got this job. So it worked out perfect. You got to play. I gave you a scholarship. You were a good player. I love you. You love me. And that relationship allowed you to skip some steps that led to this job. Okay, that's a byproduct of the first career. This career, You can't wait on my protection. You're going to have to earn your own, just like you did as a player. But the same thing happens with coaches, right? But the same thing happens almost in every industry. And so I don't have the answer yet on what it is that I'm going to do. And I've told Corey, I think I would be fine, like, doing a lot of things. And she's like, yeah, the key word is doing. You're not going to not do anything. Our legacy is going to be what we leave in others. It's not going to be what we leave for others. It's going to be what we leave in them. And how can we always be aware and thoughtful and conscientious that the impact we're making is to leave something in that person? And I think over time, the compound interest, like Albert Einstein says, it's the eighth wonder of the world, compound. Yeah, we think of compound in money, but compound is time. Compound is energy. Compound is love. Compound is wisdom. How can we have impact in what we leave in other people? Good to see you, man.
No better way to end it, Coach. I appreciate you. Listen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.